What's up, bankers?
Hello, Vankers.
Today is a very special day. It is our 1 year anniversary. We started this podcast a year ago, Brian and I, and we couldn't have had a more special guest.
If you had told me a year ago that we were going to have the guest that we have on today when we started this little thing, then I would have slapped you twice in the face and would have told you to scram. Would have told you to get out of my face and don't lie to me. Don't get my hopes up.
Yeah, I've been telling my parents about this podcast for a year, and they've never cared or taken it seriously. And then I told my dad, I said, Dad, name one guy. My dad's a Jew from Brooklyn. He doesn't know anything about motorsports. I said, name one guy in racing. Just name one guy, and that's who we got. He goes, Mario Andretti. I go, that's who we got. He goes, oh my God. I might actually have to listen to this fucking podcast now. I might actually be proud of my son for once in his life. So without further freaking ado, we bring to you the man, the myth, the legend.
Truly. Mario Andretti, thank you so much for coming on the Red Flags.
My pleasure, guys. Matt, Brian, you guys look great.
Thank you.
You have a glow about you.
Yeah,
you have a real glow about you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod, for helping Matt solve his relationship with his father. You know, you're already doing amazing work. You're validating us, even though we're absolutely punching above our weight class right now.
Yeah, that made my day already.
Yeah,
I'm sweating bullets right now. Okay.
Well, it's one of these things where you for Americans and their relationship to motorsport, you're either like crazy into it or it's a thing in the background, but you puncture the masses. You puncture, like, for people for like Matt's dad, who's kind of motorsport's not been a huge thing in his life, but you know, it's Mario Andretti. You're bigger than the sport.
You're part of the culture.
You're part of the culture.
You're part of a million rap lyrics. You're a colloquialism. When someone is driving like fast, someone says, look at this, Mario Andretti here. And I guess our first question was, what do you say when someone's driving fast? Do you say, who does this guy think he is? Me? What do you say?
No, what an idiot. That's what I say.
Okay. All
right. I don't condone that whatsoever on the road. But honestly, I mean, some people speed or whatever, but reckless driving is something that I will not ever condone. And there's some crazies out there, obviously, that create problems potentially for themselves and others. But if they create for themselves, okay, they create it. But I don't like when they obviously put others in harm's way. So yeah, when it comes to the road, I think you have to respect whoever else is out alongside of you.
That's right. So you heard it here first. If any of you who listen to this podcast think that it's okay to speed in the highway, Mario Andretti is telling you to stop. It is not okay. Listen to the Godfather of Motorsport and don't you dare. So
don't reckless drive.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. If you better get it onto a track and get a carbon fiber, monocoque.
But unless you're on the track and AJ Foyt is being a little too aggressive, then you need to assert yourself a little bit, right?
Well, you have to watch, because sometimes if you try to do it to someone else, you might get the worst part of it. So
right.
Be very careful what you wish for sometimes.
Okay.
As far as using that piece of equipment, to potentially put somebody off or whatever,
I don't know. I read some things about a younger Mario. He liked to set the tone a little bit more, but an older, wiser Mario feels a little differently. That's okay.
So Matt and I, we were saying to you that we're kind of newer motorsport fans, and I think there's a big kind of new wave of F1 fans who have all come off of the heels of Drive to Survive and have gotten really into the sport. That's who a lot of our audience is, and that's we certainly fall into that. And one of the best parts of this journey and this experience has been just learning about all the different stories and all the history and beyond Formula One itself, but into, the Indy 500, IndyCar, NASCAR, Daytona, Le Mans, all the stuff. And so I think we want to take this opportunity to just teach our listeners who maybe don't know about your life, just kind of get into the man behind the legend.
And the great characters,
Yeah.
There's so many great characters, and we want to get to know, everything you've accomplished and who you are.
So I think we want to start. So you're known as this, as a, American legend of motorsport, but you're originally from Italy. And can you talk a little bit about your childhood growing up, and then kind of where racing kind of played into it, and then going into what happened after the war, and with, you being displaced and having to become a refugee?
Well, yes. I mean, my life started when World War II broke out, basically. And the first 5 years of my life, that's what it was. We knew nothing about war. We were pretty much in the area where we were not bombarded. Specifically, the bombarding was happening about 40 miles away in a bigger city, but the danger was always there, and all the other things that went on. And at the end of the war, after the Paris Pact with US, France, Russia, and the UK, there was some territory that Italy had to give up because they lost the war along with Germany, and we happened to be the victims. The peninsula of Istria, just in the far northeast part of Italy, was ceded to Yugoslavia under, Marshal Tito, hardline communism. That was to please Russia more than anything, obviously. But again, there was a choice for all of the people that lived there to remain under and succumb to communism, or just leave. And we chose by the family, my dad and my mother and so forth, and all of our relatives chose to leave. Like it's estimated almost 300,000 from that region, which were sparse eventually all over the world. But we were refugees in our own country, in Italy for 8 years, from 1948 to 1955, well, 7 years. And again, you can see that when you're displaced, you're displaced. There was a lot of uncertainties and everything else. But us as kids, you adapt. And you play, you do all the things with other kids. And somehow Italy was so prominent in Formula One motorsports in the early 50s because all the major brands, were part of it. Ferrari, Maserati, I keep saying Alfa Romeo, and first world champion Nino Farina. So as a child, as a kid, we would see these videos, movie reels. When we go to the movies, they would have intermission, that for some reason they used to open the doors to let the smoke go out because people used to smoke there. But then they would have news from around the world, and leading the news was always sports because again, the prominence of the Italians being involved. And as young lads, with my twin brother Aldo, we just became fascinated, of course. And then after we saw the very first race, first Formula One race in Monza at age 14, 1954, always said, and that's it. That from there on, there was no plan B. It seemed like the mold was cast, and there was truly an impossible dream at the moment to even think about it. But still, as it always said, as a young lad, you can dream. You're allowed to dream, and we're dreaming big, of course. And then, then all of a sudden, we're moving to the States, and we figure, well, I wonder how the racing is in the States. Well, that's really when the real opportunities came to us, because 2 years after we arrived here, where I am now in Nazareth, we started building our own car. And we just, we summoned 4 other buddies that knew more than we did, obviously. And we started building a car to race locally. And we did a good job, not because we knew anything, my brother and I, but because I always say, one of our dudes there was a real geek. He just really knew what was going on, not just locally, but nationally with stock cars. And we raised some money to even buy information from one of the leading teams in NASCAR at the time, which was the teams that the Hudson, the Hudson brand was winning most of the short track races in NASCAR. And so we needed information when we would build a car, and it turned out to be just exactly what we needed. So once the car was ready to go, we were underage because you needed to be 21 to race professionally at the time. And we were only 1959. So we befriended, the editor of the local paper and asked him to fudge our birth date, on our license. And so we got by with that. And then we told another fib that we used to race Formula Junior in Italy. And so because we didn't really look like 21, we looked pretty young, but just to confuse people a little bit more and to give us an opportunity, we said we used to race in Italy, which was a baloney, of course.
When you can speak Italian,
I had to live with that. I had to live with that one for many, many years because it was written in Speed Sport News. Was Chris Economac, the old guru, in motor racing at the time. He picked up on that and he kept referring to it, every time that, we'd win a race. He said, oh, these kids that started racing in Italy in Formula Junior and all that. Oh my goodness. And then our relatives, then the Autosprint picked it up, and our relatives in Italy says, I don't remember you ever racing in Ancona. Because I even gave him the city because Formula Junior was racing in some of the cities, and I picked Ancona, which is on the Adriatic there. So anyway, the long and the short, though, that's when our career started. At that age, Aldo and I, we had one car, 2 drivers, 1 helmet. And, we were, you drive one weekend, I would drive another weekend, and so on. So that's what we did the first season. Yeah. But
I'm a twin. I'm a twin. Who is older?
I am 5 hours.
You're 5 hours. I was 5 minutes, and I lorded that over
5
my
hours.
sister.
I don't think the doctor knew that my mom had twins. That's a fact.
Wow. So there's another one in there.
So Aldo came out, and then there was another lump in there, I guess. I don't know. There's something going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, Aldo is the one that I was born at 5 a.m, and Aldo came out at 11.
Wow.
6. Yeah.
And that must have been nice to have, a brother that you could, because you did all this traveling, you were displaced so much, and you had someone who's, and, there was a language barrier, and, having to meet new people all the time, to have someone that you could be so close with, I imagine.
Yeah, it was, obviously we both, we were sharing the same objective, same passions, all along, and we fed off of one another. With all of that exuberance, if you will. And again, I think it was a lot easier, 2 can create more than 1, if you will, even in trouble for that matter. But it worked out. Aldo and I always got along really well. And we were able to share because we always shared everything. We never had 2 of anything until we married, actually.
Can't share a wife.
So
Can't
then
share
we had to share
a
everything. We had to
spouse.
share a car. We only had everything. One truck, one pig, one toy, one bicycle, one car. We always had to share.
So
Oh
when you
my.
went to Monza, where you were saying you were 14 years old, that was when you were already, refugees, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were actually in a refugee camp in Tuscany, in Lucca.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because we arrived there in Lucca in 1948, and we were there until 1955.
And can you pinpoint what it was that you like? Why motorsport? Why racing? That what did it for you?
I think you can't help it if you follow it all. I mean, there's excitement to it, and the fact that Italy was so prominent. Our drivers, Ascari, for instance, which was my first absolute idol, was current world champion, and what better than that? I mean, then you want to emulate somebody that's like God in that sense,
right?
And Ferrari and all of what they stood for. So I mean, it was not hard to be drawn to it for sure. And for some reason, Aldo and I were even when we were in Montana. For some reason, I never shared this thing. Like for one time, my dad was building up something that he was really. We should be looking forward to this birthday gift that we're gonna get, and we figured, we're gonna get something mechanical, a bicycle or something.
Yeah.
And here he comes up with a horse, a beautiful horse called Stella, Star, and the horse actually turned out to be, his.
Yeah.
We didn't want it.
Yeah.
So we had. There was nothing that drew us anywhere except this type of thing, the sport, and there was there was soccer. We used to play soccer as kids and all that, but that was okay. It was a good activity like anything else, but there was never, I want to be a soccer player, which was again that was very prominent at the time. But the mechanical side, it was something that I don't know, excited me. Like across from the square from the camp where we were in Lucca, there was a garage where there was repair, but also parking. Because parking was at a premium inside of Wall City in Lucca, and all the merchants would obviously have to go to parking garage, and we befriended the two partners there. They were wonderful people, and Aldo and I, and in fact they were the ones that took us to Monza, by the way. But that's where we learned to drive, and these merchants would come in and they had some fancy cars. Some had Fiat small Topolinos, but there were the Lancia, there was the Alfa Romeos, and little by little, these friends of ours, they taught us how to drive. So we were parking cars, but we were doing burnouts and everything.
There was a little Ferris Bueller's Day Off with the valets driving their cars like crazy.
When I valet my car today, I'm thinking, I said, they better not do any burnouts of my, my cars.
If there's too much of a glint in their eye, that something's up.
Yeah, so
mechanically, it would be karma, honestly.
Yeah, we were just drawn to that, and again, and there was never an alternative, if you will. They never thought, okay, this is going to fail or whatever. We always thought that maybe we start racing motorcycles, which would be probably a lot easier in the sense of obtaining, doing motorcycles. There were some local racing with motorcycles, but and the other one was the so-called impossible dream. But again, but we never gave up at that hope. Never figure, okay, well, if this doesn't happen, whatever. Yeah, it had to happen. And I think that's that mindset, I think is what we needed to really work it out, because we had to do it without my dad knowing. My dad, that's well known that he did not, it's not that that he wasn't, he didn't want us to have things. It's just that he as a father, he was looking at the negatives that the sport was presenting at the time, how dangerous it was. I mean, our idol, Alberto Ascari, was killed just the year, a couple of months before we came to the United States, so that in itself was not very helpful for us to tell, hey, Dad, we want to be race drivers. So your kids are crazy,
Right.
He always, one thing he said that stuck with us, he said they, from a racer, they bring home more body bags than they do trophies, so, and at the time, in those times it was true, actually, unfortunately, but that was the nature of the sport then. And so we had to sort of do our thing. And my dad actually found out at the end of the season, at the very last race of the season, that we were racing when Aldo got hurt. Aldo got hurt very badly. In fact, they gave him his last rites that night in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. And the next day, I called my mother and I said, Mom, and I had to confess, I said that I was racing and Aldo was watching and he fell off the back of a truck. He banged his head, and she was very quiet because I think she knew. Moms know, but and she was caught in the middle. And then I said, well, we'll be home tomorrow. Well, I stayed over. Obviously, we slept over in the hallway, but the next day we had to have our parents over. In fact, the doctors and actually the police there says that we must have the parents over.
Right.
And that's how my dad found out. and
serious grounding after that. That's 2 years of, you're grounded for 2 years.
Well, you got to hear this one. Aldo was in a coma for quite some time. When he finally came to and then he started speaking, he said, the first thing he said to me, I'm glad you had the one to face the old man.
Yeah.
So
he had it lucky.
He knew what I had to go through. He said he was the lucky one. He said, there's no way that he was going to touch him. So anyway, so we survived that one okay. But my dad, and of course, it was a tough the following year, but when he found out that he thought we learned a lesson. But the following year, when he found out that we were still racing, in fact, I was already started building the new car while Aldo was still in the hospital. And he took a sabbatical the following year. And then, but when Dad found out, and that it was a bit of hell to pay in that respect, but there's nothing he could do in that sense except maybe throw us out of the house, which he obviously didn't. But it was very quiet for several months there.
Sure.
And the old silent treatment.
Yeah, silent treatment, of course. But little by little, he understood that it's going to continue. We're not going to give this up with everything we put into it. And he says, "You guys are crazy," whatever. Then he started asking Aldo, how's Mario doing, and vice versa. So it's showing, if you want to show directly that he was obviously dealing with it and giving, what I mean, and giving his approval, if you will, quietly. But he became the biggest fan, of course, as time went on, but as you can imagine.
Well, you had the vision. In certain ways, you had the vision of what this thing could be. I mean, it's definitely, compared to now, it's just a whole other world of the dangers of what it was like back then. We did a episode we watched a documentary about Fangio, and we did an episode on him. They talked about the Le Mans disaster. Do you remember reading about that, hearing about that?
No kidding. I mean, actually, on the way over, we were out at sea for 9 days when we came over in 55. And that was during the weekend of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where 85 spectators were killed when Pierre Levesque's car went up in the stands. And that was in the manifest, because on the wall every day they would have news around the world And this was the big news again about motor racing, and Pierre Levesque obviously was killed, and then 85 spectators. So these are the negatives that my dad
Right.
was confronted with, but because that's, that's what was always, headlines and whatever. So, and it was understandable that I figure, your kids, that's a fatherly protection, fatherly, just a normal reaction from a father, to keep the kids safe, to make, so he could not even begin to understand our passion and love we truly had at the time. But he finally came to grips with that.
But you did have one very supportive family member in your wife, correct?
Oh, yes. I mean, that was golden for me because, when you pursue something like this as vigorously as I did, you're very selfish. There's some sacrifice around you. Deanne and I had a young family. When I was 21, she was 19. When we had our first child, and the subsequent it was Mike, it was Jeff, and then it was Barbie, and so as you could see, the responsibility was there. And with all the travel and everything that was doing, she was handling everything perfectly and properly, and not ever making me feel guilty, if you will. Okay, our friends were having picnics, were just enjoying the weekends, and I was working every weekend and all those things. But without that and without her approval didn't have to be, oh yeah, it's okay, do it. She just went along. She was just so even keel. I mean, her character was such that she didn't have to say anything, to show me that, okay, you're okay. Just do what do what you love, and you're providing for us and all of that. So yeah, that was extremely important for me because I know that not all of my friends had that type of support, and I know that when you have to fight that as well, it's I think it can be distraction on top of everything else.
Right. So you climbed so you were in the stock cars for a while. You climbed to, you made, it was a little nuanced, but you made the jump to midget cars, then sprint cars, then champ cars. And that was like the rung of the single seater. You did the single seater climb, although it wasn't smooth sailing in the beginning. You faced some sort of discrimination.
Well, yes, I did. And again, sometimes those things make you stronger, if anything, when you're being tested like that. And obviously my objective was to get into single seaters as soon as possible. The quickest and best way, most practical way was to go through the stockers like I did, but first opportunity. And so I got into 3/4 midgets. And fortunately, like anything, but it's like going to school. But you want to win where you are. And fortunately, I did exactly that. I was able to win. And even in 3/4 midgets, I won the biggest race of the season, that in Teaneck, New Jersey, a 100-lapper. And who was second to me? Len Duncan, one of the icons of midget racing in that era. And all of a sudden, through that, I earned a ride in a full-size midget the following season, and with the Mateka brothers. And here again, I won, with them. And then as I went on, in fact, on Labor Day 1963, I won 3 races in one day, 3 features, which never happened before or since. Within the 24 hours, Labor Day was a race in the afternoon, just in Flemington, New Jersey. Then that evening was in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. But also after I won the second one, there was a third feature to be run because it was a from a rain out feature that to make up, and I won that third feature. And so from there, somebody took notice in the top ranks, in USAC,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
got with the sprint car.
And that was yeah. And then you moved to sprint, and then you moved to basically champ cars, which is IndyCar.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
when did you
IndyCar
start?
now.
When did you
Yeah,
start kind of
wait.
like, when did it come from a thing that
Realizing.
was, oh, now I can actually start to make money, that this investment's starting to like
Also,
turn
to
into-
piggyback on that question, but also when in this whole story did you realize like that you were better than everybody, like that you're like
Yeah.
the best at this?
Yeah.
Like when did that occur to you?
Yeah, you get the pace.
Well, I don't think I ever felt that way.
You never
What
felt that way.
What I
You
needed
won
to-
3 in one day. You're 21. You won the whole thing. You get at 25 years old, you get to champ car. You win the whole thing.
Yeah,
At a certain point, the results, they speak for themselves. You
Yeah.
don't have to say anything.
Well, it gives you confidence, no question.
Oh, yes, it does.
Yeah, it gives you confidence, and you feel, and and you feel like you belong. It says, you know what, maybe I'm okay in this business. Because and that's huge, though. I mean, because you have no idea until you're really there, until you do it. Just the passion and desire and all of that, unless you do it, it doesn't tell you anything, so and that's important. And the other thing is that coming through the ranks, it's just like going to school. You don't want to repeat second grade, third grade. You want to move on. So I felt that as soon as I felt that I was winning in those categories, you can make a career in some of those categories. Some people do.
Right.
I wanted to move on. My objective was always to get to the top. Like in the U.S. at the time, to me, I wanted to be in the Indy cars, to run for the national championship. And I couldn't get there fast enough, quite honestly. And that's what I worked toward. And there was a lot of things happening at the right time. And unfortunately, and fortunately, I was able to take advantage of somebody else's bad luck or misfortunes, like injuries, and even worse. Where all of a sudden the seat was open and I get a test. Now it's you do or you don't. You do, or I don't say do or die, or you do or you don't. And when do you know that the first test that I was invited to was with one of the top 3 teams. It was a Dean Van Lyon team in Indy cars, and their driver Chuck Hulse. I had the misfortune, and Roger Penske was the other driver that was invited first before me.
Right. But
he had some other commitments. He couldn't make it. So I was invited, and it was a Firestone tire test in Trenton, New Jersey. And that's it. That was the key moment for me, because somehow, for whatever reason, the engineers sort of, after, I did some few laps and so forth, they liked some of the way that I was describing the feeling on some of the tires. So I was brutally honest. And there was Roger Ward and Parnelli Jones were the other 2 drivers, which was consummate and veterans, and sometimes the veterans tell the engineers what they want to hear, if you will. And somehow something clicked there, that they say, we're going to keep this young lad around. And for me to be invited to do more testing and so forth was golden, because, they're getting miles under my belt, and it helped me just really develop some of the skills that I needed. Again, a lot of things were just going in the right direction, fortunately for me. And I was able to take advantage of every bit that was coming my way. So, we have very auspicious beginning, because my very first year in the Indy cars at the top level, I won a championship there. I was the youngest one to do so in '65.
Boom. because
apparently it was
you
all
had the
luck.
pace.
It was all luck. Apparently,
It was all
Because
you had it.
it was just luck. So you won at 65. So 67, you get to work with Bruce McLaren. I mean, we got, as F1 fans, we got to ask what he was like, what you got to learn, if you got to learn from him, anything on the track, off the track. What do you know?
Yeah, obviously, I can tell you that even in 65, I was already thinking about Formula One, because
Right.
all along I felt that someday I hope that I can earn my way into Formula One. I have to have the opportunity somehow. So it was always in the back of my mind, even when I was still driving in a midget. You know that in 63, we had a one road race in Lime Rock, Connecticut, in the midgets, and I won it.
Right.
And I won it
Yeah.
over the Mark Donahue, who was driving a specially built rear engine midget for that, just for that race.
For that
and
one
I
race.
won the lap. So like I say, the road racing was just something. And there was only one road race in 65 in a championship in USAC, and I won that one. So you can see road racing. And at the end of at the end of Indianapolis, you know, where I finished third and Jim Clark won it, I befriended during the month, I befriended Colin Chapman and also Jim. And then we were saying our goodbyes. And I said this a million times, but you got to hear it, that I told Colin Chapman, I said, Colin, someday I would like to do Formula One. And he says, Mario, he says, when you think you're ready, you call me and I will have a car for you. And this is where we're going now, you know, into sports cars, because Ford began this drive to win Le Mans in 1966. And I had a good relationship with Ford, and I offered that I want to be part of all of the testing, because there was miles and miles of testing to be done, alongside of, you know, Ken Miles, you know, who was in
the movie.
The movie,
the movie that Ford versus Ferrari and all that. And then of course the best part was Bruce McLaren, as you mentioned. He was obviously one of the because he had won Le Mans with the GT40 the year before. That was the first one. You know, he wasn't supposed to win it, but he did. I don't know if you know, they showed that even in the movie where Ken Miles was supposed to win. All three Fords were supposed to cross the line, you know, almost lined up. And the last second, Bruce just accelerated. and he won. He wasn't supposed to do that, but I give him credit. You know?
Yeah.
And
I thought we were racing here.
He got the trophy. It's all in racing, you know. Anyway, Bruce and I really hit it off. And the reason that I really, on top of it all, wanted to befriend him was because he was a very good technical driver, you know, as far as really rotating the car and the hairpins and all that. These are all the things that I had to learn. I had, you know, I was pretty good on the tops, you know, on the high speed corners and everything. But there's some of those things that I needed to hone in properly for myself. And Bruce helped me tremendously, even just but allow me to just go out and as soon as you would take over the car during the test, I would go on a scooter and go one of the slow corners, somewhere hairpin somewhere, and watch his line, how he would do, or how you pick up throttle quickly. So all those things, you know, that they were benefit. Yeah. And then we would discuss things at dinner at night, you know, and talk about all this thing about the braking, trail braking, and all that sort of thing that makes you go fast.
Did he have?
So you?
Yeah. Did he have plans at that point of what was going to become his you know, his career and his legacy in terms of that? Like
Bruce, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce was always thinking ahead in the sense that he was very ambitious. And as you could see that after that, you know, it seemed like in vogue to become a team owner at the time.
Right.
There was this tire war between Firestone and Goodyear, and the tire companies were ready to invest in some drivers that had these ambitions, like For instance, they invested in Foyt, they invested in Dan Gurney, and Bruce McLaren. There were some of the ones that obviously built teams that became very successsul, over decades, and he was one of them. But as you could see, what he did with Can-Am, for instance, and all that, how successful. Bruce was very, very sharp. He was technical in every way, and not only as a driver, but also a good businessman. And he knew how to surround himself with the right people. As you could see, some of his designers became, just the primo designers in the business. So he knew what the ingredients were important, and again, I think the success speaks for itself.
But that was never for you.
Excuse me?
Because you had a team, and then you were like, forget it.
Myself? No, I never had a team. No,
I thought you took over a team briefly.
Oh yeah, well, yes, I did actually. In '67, the principal, Mr. Dean, Al Dean, passed away, and the team owner at the time. I didn't want to disrupt anything, and I wanted to keep everything together. I'm the only one that actually could come up with, what I needed, to be able to buy the team, and I did. And actually, Firestone helped me somewhat too, with that. And in part of '68, basically the full season when I owned the team myself. We finished second in the championship because we didn't get any points at Indy. Because even with the championship, I was fortunate in '65, but I backed up the championship in '66 the following year. Then I finished second in the championship in '67, '68 without gaining a single point in Indianapolis, which paid double points per mile. So anyway, things were going well, no question, and I was with the right people, and that's what means everything. What accounts. The team that we had two, renowned mechanics, chief mechanics. That one was Clint Bronner, which was sort of Mary had a lot of experience, and there was a co-chief, Jim McGee, who became one of the most successful chiefs, in this career, in anyone's career along the way. And the younger one, he and I just sort of were maybe thinking more outside the box in some areas. But having the combination of both was really, really good for me. And so a lot of things were happening in the right way, as you could see, through '69. We were, between '65 and '69, I won 3 championships, and was second in the points with the closest finish ever, in '67, '68. And I didn't, in those days, the point system was that you got 2 points per mile for the races. So winning Indianapolis was 1,000 points.
Oh, wow.
But all the other races were like 100-miler, maybe 200-milers at most. So you figure how many races you had to win just to equal Indianapolis. And so by not having any points at Indy really hurt you for the championship. Because when I won Indy again, in '69, I had the championship sewed up in August, and then the last race was in December. So winning Indy was really almost every time the Indy winner usually became the national champion, almost always.
Right. And you had that your Indy win in '69 was you had a pretty bad crash in practice, right?
Practice, yeah. We were actually going to race the new Lotus that with 4-wheel drive. Actually was quite a novel and, well, I should say, interesting piece of equipment, really, that with some aerodynamics and so forth. And but it was fragile, and there were a couple of incidents on the team that Colin Chapman had. I think it was Mike Spence and also Graham Hill that crashed because of suspension failure. And finally, 3 days before qualifying, well, on a Thursday before Saturday qualifying, I was, during practice, I was actually had a set a record. I think just a lap before, and the right rear wheel just came off coming turn 4, and I had a huge crash, fire, and everything else. And we had a spare car, but at that point, with all the failures that we had, mechanical failures that we needed redesign, there was a decision to be made. The 4-wheel drive cars were,
too dangerous, not
too dangerous,
Yeah.
Too risky.
So
Yeah.
so they I can't find a word. They were
Not reliable.
yeah, and we had to go to a spare car, the Bronner Hawk, that we never intended to actually race there, but I won the race before in Hanford, California, and only had 2 days to work it up to speed, and I put it in the front row, unfortunately, and that turned out to be the winning car. Again. Yeah.
So, I mean, what is, this is sort of you could just sort of drive anything, doesn't really matter. I mean, you had 2 days to practice with this new car that because usually you go to Indy, you have a month, for people who don't know, correct?
Yeah.
And then
at that time, 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, before qualifying.
He's so humble. Yeah, you had 3 weeks. What other guys had 3 weeks to the car? You had 2 days of that car, and then you win the Indy 500. We skipped in your whole list of things that you won. You also won the Daytona 500, your second time ever. It took Dale Earnhardt, his whole life to win that race, and everybody in Daytona you were the only people in the South that were happy. It seemed that you won, but because you were a total outsider. I mean, what is it about you think that made you so adaptable, that made you be able to go into all these different disciplines? Because we're going to get to F1 in a second, which is, what most of our fans are interested in.
Yeah, I think when you're driven, when you really want to do something, when you have, I said, all my career, my entire career, I was driven by a burning passion, to just get on and do it. And I was curious. I was always curious, how does, my specialty was open wheel single seaters, but I loved sports prototypes. I didn't particularly love stock cars, but it's a race car a race car. And it's got different characteristics and all that, but somehow when you really want to do it, you adapt. You figure out a way to adapt. And for me, from moving around, this is one thing that I'm very proud of career-wise. I think I'm the only one ever that won races on a dirt track and won races in Formula One. And that was sometimes, it was like almost 1 weekend apart type of thing. But then I look back, even, I'm just going off track here, but I learned something on the dirt tracks, on a dirt track racing, that helped me in wet races,
Right.
wet road race. About on a dirt track, every lap, almost conditions just change. You're always searching for grip and this and that. That's what you do in the wet races, and you learn how to just search for things, and you learn the feel for a lot of things. So no matter what the difference is in the different cars, you're always looking for somewhat of the same thing, if you will. And the only difference in different cars is they have a different limit, the limit of before disaster, if you will. And you try to find that as quickly as possible, so you don't flirt with that so much. And but I think it's all about the desire, really, when it comes down to it. And it's a personal thing. You either have that or you don't. You either care about that or you don't. You really, I don't know how to explain it because I don't know what's in anybody else's head. All I know is how much satisfaction I derive out of just going somewhere where it's not my specialty and not just race there, but win.
Right.
You walk away, figure, damn it, good. Things are good. When there's something there that's very special, very different.
Well, it feels like it goes back to that. I mean, even, you talking about when you were a kid and you went to, Monza and you saw that first race, that spark of this is the thing I got to do, is that it carries throughout your entire life.
It does. It does.
And just having to adapt your whole life, no matter what the circumstances are. And
that's the thing. Yeah, I think it all.
Because you say it's about desire, but I see modern Formula One drivers and they're like, oh, the car doesn't agree with them, like the car is being developed away from him, and I'm like, well, Mario Andretti he just went from one car to just different models of cars and didn't matter. So I don't know if it's necessarily just I don't know. It's just kind of baffling to me to look at your career and then read about Daniel Ricciardo, how this McLaren doesn't really agree with his driving style. It's still a Formula One car.
Yeah, well, that's it. I just don't know how to really put my finger on things like that because, again, we all have our way of approaching things. And I can't say this is right or this is wrong. I have a way. And somehow, again, I just love the opportunity to really see, to put my arms around something and try to understand it as quickly as possible. I thought it's part of the challenge, that I embraced quite openly, quite honestly. And, some people are more finicky than others about the setups, like unless it's really perfect. They just don't like to push some limits, and others find a way to maybe adapt and learn. That's why I think it was really good for me to do a lot of testing, and during the early part of my career, because you could try a lot of things. You have the luxury to try a lot of things while you're testing, because and I did, I just the one thing that I found out quite early, that the more you understand the animal, the easier it will be for you to deal with it. It's just like just like an animal trainer. It's you got, okay, how do you deal with this cat or that cat? This lion and tiger, for instance. And are they both the same? Probably not, and to really understand how to do it, so you're in command, and you feel you're in charge and not allowed that beast to hurt you, type of thing. So that's really how you look at it.
So you meet
Formula One.
Yeah. So you meet Colin Chapman in 65. And then, he says that at some point when you want to come to F1. So when do you make that call? I know that there was a period of time where you were kind of only doing Formula One part-time, and then you're going into more of the full-time, going with Lotus.
Yeah. But in 68, when I called him, I asked him, I said, I would like to do the last two races of the season. Which would be Monza and Watkins Glen. And I said, right, I will have a car for you. I said, there's a glitch here, however. The weekend of Monza, I have to come back to the States on Saturday and race at the Hoosier 100 in Indianapolis on a dirt track. And the reason I had to do that, because I was going for the championship. I couldn't afford to give up a champ car race. And so he agreed. He said, okay. And but we tested in Monza, and the test went very well. In fact, up to that point, the only thing that I had driven of a single seater was an Indy car on a road course. And an IndyCar much heavier and so forth. And because of that, it doesn't break as well. So when I sat in that first Formula One car, I figured this is heaven. You know,
Wow.
it felt actually easier to drive than an Indy car on a road course. And you know, of course, Lotus, you know, was Lotus. And so it was really good for me. I felt, you know, after the test, in fact, I set a quick time there, which Chris Amon with Ferrari was testing there a week before. And I was told that I went a little bit quicker than him at that time. So I felt really good about it. But there was, again, I had to just qualifying in those days. You could qualify, you could use your time. Every time you were on the track, the time counted for qualifying. So there were 4 practice sessions, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday. Any time would count for qualifying. And then I could only run the first practice, and that time would be determining my grid position. And I talked Bobby Unser into coming to Italy with me. I got him a ride in a BRM. So during practice, we could do some slipstreaming. So help each other, you know, to go quicker.
Right.
At the time, which I didn't think that my teammates were going to be doing much help, you know, were going to help me very much. So I asked Bobby, and that worked out pretty good. And then we came back to the States. We ran first practice in the morning. We got a 2:45 flight out of Malpensa, Milano to New York. And we ran the Hoosier 100 the next day. In fact, I finished second to Foyt. And then flew back, and we arrived there. We arrived at the track, it was about 10:45 in the morning. And so it was in time. And there was a protest. And you know, we never found out for sure who protested. All I know is that Colin Chapman was in the room, and they were only speaking Italian.
Yeah,
and
we know who it was.
though,
Come on.
We know
Mario,
who
we
it
know who it
was.
Yeah.
Coming after one of their own.
And
but you know, the organizer at Bacigalupi and Count Lurani, who was the ACUS, like the FIA of in Italy, they all had agreed that we're going to waive the 24-hour rule, which is what the protest was about, because we knew that 24-hour rule was going to be an infringement.
yes.
And, but they were going to waive it. But the protest somehow was upheld, and they did not let me start. And I was at that point, even though I set the time early Friday, I was 7th on the grid, which is I thought pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And so because of that, my actual debut was 2 weeks later at Watkins Glen.
Which you put on pole.
I put on pole, yeah. And I was, you know, here again, I figure, man, how sweet is that? You know?
Well, I got to ask you a question, Mario. I got to ask this. When you put it on pole in your first race, were you a little disappointed? You were like, I thought this was the pinnacle of motorsports, and I just put it on pole my first race.
Well, the way, you know, the way I looked at it, you know, a race car is a race car. And,
right.
And, you know, if you're a race driver, you cannot get lost in, okay, this is a pinnacle, this is this and that.
Okay, that's our job.
None, you know, not to take anything away from it, but at the same time, you can glamorize things to the point that it works against you, type of thing.
Right.
And to me, you know, I just went by what felt right, and I said, and I felt right at home. Quite honestly, pretty quickly. I had a lot to learn. I mean, I had never driven a full race yet, and all that. But again, as far as getting the speed, and when I looked next to me was Jackie Stewart, you know, current world champion at the time. So I felt, okay, maybe I belong here, type of thing, and that's huge. That's huge for confidence. And again, you know, the clutch went in the race and so forth, you know, within finish. But you know, I did it sporadically because, to be honest with you, the earning power, financial earning power in Formula One was not even close to what we could do earn here in the United States.
Interesting.
Especially even in IndyCar over NASCAR. I mean, we were a distance king, and quite honestly, I always say, you know, I didn't race just for the money, but again, we knew what we were facing in those periods, you know, as far as the potential danger. I mean, how many guys friends I had lost already. Not that I figured, okay, I'm going to be killed, but, you know, I had a family also, and I felt that for the security, the financial security was that important, and I could not give that up. That's why I didn't continue with Lotus. And then they got Emerson Fittipaldi came in my place, and and then I moved on. Then I did Ferrari. That's why in '71, you know, I won, my first Formula One race in a Ferrari and stuff, because I was sort of moving around. In 1970, I drove March for the Granatellis, the sponsor, the March team, and so forth, and we had a Formula One. They entered Formula One car there and everything, and the best I had was a third in Spain, and that season. But then I got upside down in Austria and all that. But nevertheless, I mean, it's unfortunately in those periods I just could not afford to go full-time Formula One, and I have no regrets. However, you know, it's just a way. But the fact that at one point in my career, I made a choice. I had to make a choice to do it now or never, you know, and I was already, 35 years of age. And so I figured, and that's when I decided now I'm going to devote whatever time I need to in my career to satisfy myself in Formula One, which started in 1975.
Right. And then it all came together in 78.
Yes, 78. In 76, when I joined Lotus, because the Parnelli team, which was all-American team, at the end of, we did the 75 season, and we started the 76 season, and at Long Beach, which was, I think, was the second or third race of the season, they decided to withdraw for the rest of the season, to withdraw from Formula One, period, without even telling me. And so I got the news while I was on the grid before the race with Chris Economaki, the gentleman I just told you. He was, he says, Mario, he puts a mic on my face. He said, Mario, says, what do you think? He says, this is going to be your last race in Formula One. Parnelli, Val Parnelli decided to withdraw after this. I said, oh my goodness. But here again, a negative became a positive, because I don't think I would have had much of an opportunity to win too many races with them, even though I should have won the Spanish Grand Prix of Montjuic in Barcelona. I was leading, and the suspension broke, and then I took the lead from James Hunt and everything, and I think I would have won that race with that car. But nevertheless, when the news was given to me, I figure, oh my goodness, now what? The next day, I was having breakfast at the Queensway Hilton in Long Beach, and across the room was Colin Chapman, and both of us had our chin in our socks, because I had, obviously the worst day of my life there, and then Colin Chapman had the worst weekend of his career with his cars. And so we looked at each other, and I joined him, and we started talking. And I said, Colin, I'm out of a ride. They withdrew the entries now from the rest of the season, and I want to stay in Formula One now. And he says, Mario, I wish I had a decent car to give you. He says, I would love to have you drive for me. I said, Colin, two things. You make me number one and on the team, and we'll make the car better. He says, got the job. And we made the car better and better through the season. The car was not very good. And I think we got 2 or 3 podiums, and I won the last race of the season in Japan, which actually was a race that was featured in the movie Rush, and they never showed me up there on the pylon that I won.
Ron Howard, what the
I said,
hell?
Ron Howard, yeah, maybe because I was American or something, but
That's the real, yeah.
in fact, not only won, I lapped the field. If you look at the statistics,
Did you walk out of that? Did you walk out
James
of the
Hunt finished third, 1 lap behind. He was not even second. So that's the kind of credit that I got.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so, but when you look at how encouraging, there's nothing better than winning the last race of the season.
Yeah.
Just really get everybody just on the right mode, to just to go forward. In fact, Colin made a statement to me. He says, Mario, he says, next year's car would make this one look like a London bus. And that was music to my ears, again, as you can imagine.
Well,
Yeah.
that 78 Lotus it's a classic. It's an iconic car of Formula One. Can you talk about like when you're getting when they so much of it Formula One, which is maybe it's like this in every motorsport league, but it feels especially now where it's when you have the right car, you can really it's the car can be king. Can you talk about driving like that car, hitting the sweet spot after this time of building that up and driving that car and that experience?
And
that
you were
season?
also, and how instrumental you were in developing it.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, actually, we I took ideas from the March, the 701 March car that Robin Hurd had designed with the side pods. And I remember we were testing in South Africa with the Granatelli, and the track in Kalami is at altitude. So I figured maybe those side pods create some drag and so forth. So we, they were only fiberglass, just snapped on the side. So I had them take them off. And then the car all of a sudden was flying the front end, which means the side pods, which were the shape of a wing, they would create a downforce. And that's what when we were talking about, we were caucusing about the next year's car, the engineers telling me, Mario, I said, well, what I said, what I would like, obviously the driver always wants downforce without drag penalty. And then I started talking to him about the side pods that we had in March. And I said, they were very short, that's a very short wingspan. And I said, what if we don't use the entire length of the wheelbase and create something like that and then put fences on them? And that's how actually we discover later on what ground effects, how it was created. This was nobody was going we're going to design a ground effects car. This is something that happened as we went on, because yes, we were getting downforce, but there wasn't until a test in Hockenheim in Germany, a couple of races into the season with that the Bosch curve that connected the two straightaways was a long right-hander. And as the car, in the middle of the corner, when I had the most tilt in the car, when the skirts would close the gap, all of a sudden I was getting the most downforce. I said, Colin, I'm gaining tremendous amount of downforce in the middle of the corner, because we're closing the gap on the left side. So he sent one of the mechanics in town to get some sheets of plastic, to close the gap. And I go out there and say, all of a sudden, but it will only last for about 2 laps or so because you wear it out. And that's when, if if you look at during part of the season in 77, we had like a brush, that at least it was not really perfect, but at least it was consistent throughout the race. It was just like bristles, that they were closing the gap. And then toward the end of the season, he developed the moving skirts.
Uh-huh.
You probably heard of that.
Yeah. Those
That's-
are
Yeah, they were dragging, and that's how that ground effect was developed. And then Colin Chapman developed actually a special wind tunnel with a moving road with a belt, because to put the car in a static wind tunnel like they used to, without having the movement of the wheels, spoiling the airflow, they were getting erroneous reading, from that type of ground effect. So, and then Colin, he came up with the moving belt on the wind tunnel.
right.
And that's how this whole thing just developed. But it was one thing leading to another. And I was happy. I'm just happy that I was really part of it, because I'm the one that was giving a lot of the information back, because, but also, it'll be disputed someday, but I just caution I like anyone to just come and tell me different, that I gave that idea, from the March car, to build that, the long wing shape along on the pods of the car, which started everything that we have learned until today. But
Right.
that's what started then.
Well,
amazing.
you heard it here first.
You heard it here
Mario
fir- I
Andretti
mean-
invented ground effects, and
Well,
we
I
won't hear
didn't
any
invent-
different.
it's not that I didn't invent that, but I think I had something to do with the idea that
Right.
was that
Yes.
the ground effect was born.
Well, there's this is skipping ahead a little bit, but there's a big, a term that's being thrown around a lot this year in Formula One is porpoising, which many people
Yeah.
attribute to you in 79 because you were experiencing the porpoising effect on your car.
Yeah,
right?
we of course, and the and the purpose is created by sometimes even too much downforce,
Yeah.
where you have to obviously make the suspension a lot stiffer, because the car bottoms and it bounces up.
Wait, were you the first porpoiser?
It's a compromise. I'm one of the first porpoisers for sure. And,
Wow.
Very relevant. I mean,
First,
that's been the term of this year's season is the porpoising. So people have been talking
Yeah,
about how you coined that
the
phrase.
OP, original porpoiser.
Yeah, because they have more of a tunnel type of effect, and obviously they're trying to gain more ground effect, so they don't have to have as large a rear wing, because that's what creates all the turbulence.
Right.
So the cars can follow better, which they accomplish quite a bit of that actually.
When you see Lewis Hamilton doing that, are you like, yeah, I don't miss that? That's the one thing.
Well, it's annoying as hell, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
At least when you get porpoise, you have good ground effect, the car, but sometimes, like I said, the compromise is obviously you have to have very stiff suspension, which slows you in the slower corners when you don't have as much downforce, so you have to compromise the situation in so many ways. And, too much downforce is really probably not what you really need. You have to have just a balance, if you will.
So the year before you win the F1 championship, but it's a bit of a bittersweet kind of end to that season because your teammate unfortunately passed away in Monza.
The same race that you clinch it.
In the same race that you clinch it, yeah.
Nothing worse than that, of course. And just some of the tragedies that we were experiencing those days. And, here I lost another friend, a really close friend. That should have been the best day of my life, career-wise, and I couldn't celebrate. We could not celebrate it, as you can imagine. So, but that was the nature of the sport at the time. There were too many of those situations, as you as you can imagine. That's why, the safety aspect had to come into play. And that's why we organized the GPDA was started for these reasons, just to try to start enforcing, safety characteristics. And the reason had to be organized because, especially on the cars, almost every safety feature is a performance penalty. That's either aerodynamic or weight and so forth. So it has to be legislated into the rules that everybody has to have it. But then along the way, there was a lot of improvements on the tracks as well. So it took a while for this thing to really become, more of a serious approach. But thank goodness it's been very vigorously pursued, until now, that today the sport is enjoying the best moments ever. In that respect, the drivers have the best chance ever to retire on their own terms at the end of their careers. And that speaks volumes, because that did not exist in the decades of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and so forth.
Yeah. So I think, there's even more after your time winning in Formula One, but you've been racing for so many years since then, and your sons have gotten into it, your nephew, and even grandson, and there's the Andretti empire then started to be formed, and then Andretti on top of you, and the family name is certainly synonymous with American motorsport, and now there's a bit of a push to try to get Andretti into Formula One. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, as you could see that as both sides of the family, there are 8 race drivers, including Aldo and so forth. There's third generation on his side, third generation on my side, and you could see that the kids just decided to pursue this. And as you look back, we had some degree of I think of good times together, let's put it that way, and some success as a family. Just going back to even Michael and I, we've been on podium 15 times in an IndyCar race, together. So, and first, second, 5 times, and all that. So we look back as a family, we derive so much from the sport, and now. As you can see, Michael is very, very ambitious. He's already, his teams are in 7 different disciplines already, including, Formula E and then supercars, Formula E in Europe and supercar. So he got a team in Europe, in Spain, and then the supercars in Australia, and everything else that's going on. So Formula One is now it's his ultimate objective. To enter now, and the U.S. is going to have 3 Formula One races next year, as you said, with the resurgence of interest, if you will, from, as you said.
Yeah, that's us. That's us.
Yes.
Here we are.
Yeah, that's
the
wonderful.
new American interest. Yeah,
it's fantastic, and and why not having a full American team, and then for sure we will always have at least one American driver given the opportunity, and I think this should be an asset to Formula One. It's not embraced by everyone, unfortunately.
Why not?
I don't know. The teams always have something to say about it, and not all of them are agreeing, and so far, we have not been given the green light to pursue, but Michael and the team, they're already they're working. Everything is in progress as if they're given the green light. So when hopefully it will come, that, everything, a lot of things will already have been done, but this is a serious commitment from Michael's side and his group, long-term, no question. But it's a monumentous program that they have, already scheduled. And again, nothing is easy. We know that, but willing to deal with it, and to get both feet in it, and go from there. So we're all in, we're all in on this, and there should be hopefully happy times if, once they say, okay, guys, you're accepted to be on the grid in 2024.
Well, you've got, certainly tell them that you have the red flag's full support, and that should help grease the wheel, should help grease the wheel. But certainly, we would love to see it. We would love to see an American sport, especially one with your name, on the F1 grid.
That brand, yeah.
And you talked a little bit about, back in the day, there was that Indy was where you could make the money. And it feels like that's shifted now towards Formula One. What can IndyCar do to kind of start to compete with that, where Formula One has taken it? What can IndyCar be doing, do you think?
Well, looking back at the IndyCar, went through a period where there was, back in the 90s, there was a split of the ranks, and IndyCar suffered tremendously through that because they lost a lot of the basic fan base. They probably lost a generation, and with that, you lose everything else. So, as a series that's, it's the longest motor racing series on the planet, it had to almost start all over again.
Right.
And but now IndyCar is enjoying great moments as far as having the product. When you have the product, that's what you need, to be bold about the future. The quality of teams, the quality of talent, the driving talent, the young driving talent that you have there now is very, very strong. And it's all about being exposed. Look what just the series, the Netflix series did for Formula One.
Right.
It's all about getting to know what really moves and what's important, what's exciting. And the IndyCar series possesses so much of that it's not really known as well as it should. And but when you have the product, then there's hope. So again, I'm feel pretty bold about the future of the IndyCar series, no question.
Well, there's been a theme, and you've talked about it already, is that within each setback, you saw an opportunity in your life, that you've turned, you're the living embodiment of when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, So I think that type of thing, is only, you've been able to transform and transcend all of that. So, this is just another setback. I think
you need to be in charge of IndyCar. You need to be Daniel Ricciardo's driving coach. We have a lot of jobs for you.
All right, let's do some fun. Let's do some fun ones. Let's do some fun questions.
Yeah. Give me something easy.
Okay.
You're retired no, you're not retired. You're still racing.
All right. Who's your favorite celebrity that you've driven around? Because you're still doing the 2-seaters with Honda, right? So who's your favorite person you've driven around the track? Scared the shit out of?
Lady Gaga was really, she was the hoot. She really was very good. I love some of her screams and everything, and
she's got the vocals for sure.
She was real sport. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had fun. We had fun with her.
Who is the biggest coward that you drove around?
Oh, here you go again.
We'll bleep their name.
It's
nobody listens to this pod. Don't worry about it. Just tell us.
It's nobody you know.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, what's your favorite car you've ever driven?
A race
car.
Yeah.
Any car that I could win a race with.
Yeah. You know what? We had Willie T. Ribs on the podcast, and he said the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's smarter than I give him credit. then.
Yeah.
No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. I
Yeah.
take it back.
Yeah.
What
We're good
else?
friends.
Have you ever played? Okay, so here's. Have you ever played? Was there a Mario Andretti video game? We heard.
There was, yeah.
Did you ever play it?
How are you at that?
Oh, terrible.
Terrible.
Have you ever
How-
done any
how are
sim
you at
racing? Have
Mario
you ever done
Kart?
any of that? Do you do any of that?
I never wanted to race little kids because they always beat me.
What? So you're not good. Wait, so you're not good at, you're not, so the one thing you haven't been able to adapt to is video games?
No, actually, I was pretty decent. I was pretty decent in my simulator, wasn't I, Amy? It was pretty decent. I was. It's just that when you've done the real thing your entire life, it's really hard to enjoy
Yeah.
Right.
something. They you do like this. and
Yeah.
Something that you can overdo it, you don't get hurt and all that. You go
Yeah.
upside down and that reset.
When you saw Mario Kart, though, were you like, I need to call my lawyer? We're going to take legal action here?
Yeah, it was done in good taste. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
let
You let it slide. Let it slide.
it slide.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the video game that, yeah, you can't beat the real thing. Come on.
And who do you, in terms of who do you like in this season in Formula One? Who do you think?
Well, usually the usual, the usual suspects, if you will.
Sure.
As you could see, I'll put at the top Max, no question. I mean, you could tell that he's right on it again. The Red Bull that seems to have, the equipment for him at every race, and the resurgence of Ferrari again, I think, is the
Yes.
best thing that could have happened to Formula One. That's a wonderful thing to see because, let's face it, Formula One without Ferrari would not be Formula One. We got to give them that because that's a fact. And
Are they still paying you, Mario? How much are they paying you to say that?
never enough.
This is the same people that got you thrown out of Monza. Come on.
Yeah.
But
Ferrari's still Ferrari. That I don't know any brand that would have a bigger fan base around the world. So
right.
yeah, it's good, and they got two great guys there. With Charles Leclerc and of course Carlos Sainz. So you got two capable drivers. Some mistakes made even on the part of the team also a few times, which could hurt them for the ultimate prize. The World Championship. You just don't want to fall too far behind Max at the moment, and then don't ever count out Lewis and George and Mercedes. They will be there, forced to be reckoned with again, no question, before the season is over. So we have a lot of good stuff to look forward to as fans of Formula One because it's at a good place, and then you got now and then, McLaren just sneaks it in there, especially with Lando. So again, it's good stuff. I mean, it's very interesting, and can't wait for the next race. Always, there's always a lot to look forward to.
And I have a question because obviously you've succeeded so hard. Do you have any, what's your advice so we could be the Mario Andretti's of podcasting?
Oh, my advice to do that, just keep singing the song about motor racing. Keep exciting the fans like you are now. I mean, it's you saw it at learning more about it, but how it interested you. Motorsports is a very complex sport, and the more you learn about the inner workings, how important the team is in its complexity, and how a driver cannot get it done. I don't care who you are; you cannot get it done unless you have the product that can get the job done. You cannot perform miracles. So again, look back at look what George Russell was, with and unfortunately with the Williams. When he was Williams,
Yeah.
look what he is today, So you need the equipment. So it's a huge, it's a mammoth operation that you have to have behind you, and everybody, just doing, their job, to be able to do it properly. All it takes is one mistake somewhere, like a strategy or something like that, can set you back and even take you out of the play for the season. So it's a very delicate instrument that you're dealing with, on overall. It's strategies, but also preparation. It's, like I said, it's very, very complex, but also I think very, very interesting sport when you really begin to understand how it all works.
We're slowly getting there. We're slowly getting there. We just had a Red Bull engineer on the pod and just kind of learning all about the technicalities and the different things everything that goes into it. It's so amazing. All right, last question. You're listed and you're in many rap songs lyrics. Do you have a favorite song that you are used as a lyric or a reference?
Which one was that? The one with probably the first one with Charlie Daniels. It was way back, and it was one of the first songs that I think I was mentioning. And Mario Andretti would have been proud. It's yeah. I was in a rental car in California on our way to Riverside for a test, and all of a sudden I hear the song on the radio, and what's the title? And I should know the title of that. Is I
Uneasy Rider, is it?
An Easy Rider. You got it. Matt, you're a genius. You're a genius.
No, I definitely didn't Google it. I definitely didn't Google it.
We'll check it out.
An Easy Rider, yeah. And Amy Grant also. Amy Grant's, she has another one.
So I threw the man a 20 and jumped in and fired the mother up. Mario Andretti would have sure been proud of the way I was moving when I passed that crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hell yeah.
All right. Anything else, Matt?
How in the hell did we get this to happen?
I don't know. We thank you so much. This is beyond anything we ever could have hoped that this was going to be. It's such an honor to have you on. Now, if you would do us one thing. So at the end we started the podcast with "Hello Vankas," which is a reference to Gunther Steiner. Iconic quote from Drive to Survive. So at the end of each episode, we say "Goodbye Vankas."
Bye Vankas.
In a Gunther Steiner kind of voice. Would you honor us with a "Goodbye Vankas"?
Goodbye, Vankers.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the pod, Mario.
Bye, Vankas.
Bye, Vankas.